What's going on, everybody? Cheers. Happy Wednesday, and welcome to the With Her Two Hands podcast, where each week we celebrate the women who build, fix, and make the things that make the world go round with her own two hands. I am your host, Bogey. I'm a master mechanic by trade, but I am a firm believer that women belong, well, pretty much anywhere they want to be, but especially all throughout the industrial trades, a place where women generally are far underrepresented. And so this series is dedicated to them, shining a light on all of the amazing women who are kicking butt in the trades every day and who very rarely get their stories heard and a light shown on them. So thank you for tuning in and joining us on this adventure. It's great to see some familiar names hanging out with us as always every week. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, welcome. This is new every Wednesday. We meet with a new different tradeswoman, and every Monday we release an archive episode. This series used to live on Instagram under a different name. It was called Trades Lady Happy Hour, and we were on Instagram for about 3 years before we moved on over to YouTube. So we've been slowly releasing those archive episodes one at a time every Monday. So 2 times a week, you get to hang out with me and meet another incredible tradeswoman. I want to thank our sponsors this week who helped make this week's episode possible, both ASE and Drive Time, 2 major names in the automotive industry. ASE, you're probably familiar with them for their Blue Seal certification and their automotive certification program. But what you may not know is that behind the scenes, they do a ton of work to really help develop the standards of the automotive industry and also help bring up the next generation of technicians, both by training the trainers who teach in auto shop programs across the country, but also throughout all sorts of programs like an Adopt a School program where they connect schools with employers to help bring the next generation into the industry and starting off on the right foot. And then Drive Time is a used car seller, right? But there's so much more than that. They have locations all over the country. They employ a ton of technicians, but they have a lot of internal training, and they're a great organization with a phenomenal culture that helps people find their home, whether it is automotive, detailing, mechanical, paint and body, you name it. They have a career path and a way to help make sure that you find what your strength is and help make sure that you're successful in the industry. So if you're looking for a new car or a new job, definitely check out Drive Time. So without further ado, I'm going to shut up because we have a fantastic guest tonight. I know you guys are going to love her. I just met her recently in real life at SEMA show and had the honor of sitting down with her, and she was on a panel discussion that will be hitting YouTube soon, so keep an eye out for that. Once I have it up, I'll link it in the description for this. But she is a phenomenal young woman. She is a recent recipient of the Jessi Combs Foundation Scholarship. She's got big plans, and while she is very new in her career, she's only got a few years under her belt, she's definitely had some experience. She's got some stuff to say, and I know that she has got a great career ahead of her, so I'm really excited to learn more about her. So without further ado, let's bring on Miss Hannah Stout Ortega. Hello.
Hi Bogey. Hi everyone.
How are you, my dear?
I'm great. How are you?
I am much better now that I've recovered from SEMA and SEMA sickness.
I feel that. It's like you need a week of recovery to get over the week of running around like a chicken with your head cut off.
Oh, 100%. Well, it's funny because I told myself that after SEMA, I was going to do nothing for a week. And then I got home from SEMA and my body was like, and now you're sick. So even if you thought about doing anything, you're not gonna. So my body forced me to not do anything for a week. So
You needed it.
I really did. Oh my goodness. That was your first SEMA too, right?
Yeah, it was like a whole nother ballpark, you know, because I've done Sturgis and other smaller events with JCF before, but SEMA was a mind of its own. That was a whole nother animal.
I know we're getting off track here, but I gotta hear like what your opinion of SEMA was. This like your first time going. What was your impression of it?
It was like, so everybody always tells you how big it is, how massive, like it, you know, put your good walking shoes on, but like it's no joke for real. I was like, I don't know, like it was so much going on, but so much of all like the stuff, you know, that I love. And it was just, it was amazing. I'm like, I have to go every year now. Like, this is an annual trip.
Heck yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't get old. I mean, I I shouldn't say that. I've been there for I've gone 13 years now. I wouldn't say it's gotten old, because there's still stuff that I haven't seen. Ha Yeah, I said that right. That was grammatically correct, right? There's stuff that I haven't seen, but at the same time, like, it gets to be intense. It's, like, a lot. I'm like, it's the
Yeah.
best, worst week of the year every year. I'm like, "This is amazing. I love seeing all of my people," and by the end of it, I wanna cut my feet off and not do anything for a week, so, you know.
Yeah. See, but I had a great first experience because we had the she shed for the first time ever. So
Yes!
that was like, that was a game changer, I feel like, because with, you know, without that, without our booth, there was
Yeah,
nothing else, you know, for women to do. But that was kind of like our little safety zone, you know, come sit down and have a snack and
totally.
take a drink of water if you need to, you know, have a breather. But in, you know, of
Right?
course, surrounded by all these awesome, supportive, you know, women, like most of the women I met there, you know, were just like instant friends, you know, that, you know, half
Totally.
of them had been there before and, you know, so it's like, "Hey, the bathrooms are here and, like, the good food's over there," you know, like, it was so fun, it was just a great experience.
Yeah. No, that's and I actually I want because a lot of folks may not know what we're talking about with the she shed. I swear at some point we're going to dig into you, but it's I want to talk about the she shed real quick because I want you to
Yeah.
explain to everybody what it is. I 13 years ago I went to my first SEMA. I was working under another woman who brought me as like she was a consultant in the industry and she brought me in kind of under her wing as a mentor and she tasked me with going around SEMA and seeing if I could find anything that addressed women, that was like for women. And we found nothing other than booth babes. And like that's what we reported back was that there was really nothing for women.
Yeah.
And you got to be there this year as your first year when not only was there stuff for women, but like OMG, we blew it out of the park with that. So tell everybody what the she shed is and what that was like.
Yeah, so the She Shed this year was pretty much a collaboration of 3 women-run organizations. It was Girl Gang Garage with Bogey, the Jessi Combs Foundation, and then Real Deal Revolution with Teresa Contreras. And so kind of to paraphrase what Dana has been saying is, you know, all 3 of the organizations do all the same events together and we're, you know, we're all in the same circle. So it's like, why haven't we collaborated before? And, you know, and so you came up with the idea and SEMA was the perfect platform to enroll that, you know, just a massive, huge audience. And it was just incredible, you know, because we all 3 organizations have different followings and different fans, you know, and to kind of bring everybody together in one space and have that moment of unity, I feel like was a very it was kind of like a turning point for SEMA. You know, I'm really excited to see what the next couple years bring, but just I mean, in the first year, it was insane how many people were interested, you know, even if they weren't, you know, because Real Deal teaching the workshops, even if you weren't taking a workshop, there were people watching the workshops and, you know, then through the workshops, you know, you're learning about Jessi and, you know, looking at the Jeep and just all of these connections start to come together, you know, the more you walk through the booth. And so it was just, yeah, like you have to be there next year. You got to be there if you
Absolutely.
weren't. So,
Absolutely. Male or female, if you're at SEMA
yeah.
next year, we are going to go bigger and better even for She Shed next year. It really was an incredible week. And as Hannah kind of pointed out, like there were so many female trades folks hanging out in the booth that it was kind of the same experience that you get when you come to Girl Gang Garage or when you go to a Real Deal workshop or do a JCF Foundation event. Like you're suddenly surrounded by sisters that you didn't know you had and it's like amazing to have that moment. It was pretty powerful to see. So pretty phenomenal first year you had.
Yeah, it was kick ass, I would say.
And I mean that makes sense because you've been having a pretty phenomenal first several years of your career, haven't you?
It's had its phenomenal moments, but it's definitely had some less than.
All
throughout. But
right.
no, I love what I do, and I'm ready to do more. So
I love it. Well, let's dig in a little bit. Tell the fine folks at home, introduce yourself, tell them who you are and what you do.
yeah, so I'm Hannah, obviously. I'm 24. I'm originally from Northern Illinois, but I left home at 19 and I haven't really been back since. But I'm an auto tech by trade. I graduated from WyoTech in Laramie, Wyoming, in 2020. It was supposed to be earlier, but we had COVID happen, and so that was fun. It was a good time, but no. So I graduated from there in 2020 with an auto and diesel tech degree, as well as or certificate, sorry, in chassis fabrication as well. So
Okay.
I'm an auto tech by trade, but I would really like to kind of transition into the fabricator side
Okay.
eventually. That's what I would like to do long term. So
Nice. Very cool. So, okay, so when you left Northern Illinois, you self-describe as you left your home state to pursue a better life for yourself. So, were you running to WyoTech? Were you running from Northern Illinois? Was there like what made you pursue automotive? Like what paint a picture for me of like how you
it's
landed at WyoTech.
yeah, there's kind of like a lot that happened in between because I didn't go directly to Wyoming.
Okay.
So I was 19. I graduated the year prior from high school, and it was one of those deals where growing up, my parents, we didn't have a ton of money. It was one of those things where my parents told us if we wanted to go to college, it was a matter of scholarships or grants or whatever we could get. So that was like kind of always known in my household. And so coming up on my senior year, I took AP art classes all through high school because
Ooh,
that's my passion. I've always loved art. I've always been creative. I've
okay.
always been drawing, scribbling everywhere. And so through high school, they didn't preach trades. That really wasn't an option. I had no idea that was even an option. Excuse me. So I took all these AP classes, thought I was going to go to art school. Then, come my senior year, life kind of got a little complicated. My dad, I've always worked. I've always had a job since, detasseling when I was like 12. Always worked since then. I've paid for
Since
my own
what?
detasseling.
What
so
is
it's like a
detasseling?
so it's like every Midwestern kid's like first job. So you pretty much I think you can start at 11 or 12. And so you get hired on by a crew, and it's, like Pioneer and Monsanto corn and stuff like that. And they drop you like a busload of kids into a cornfield, and you have to go pick the tassels of
Oh,
corn to prevent the cross pollination, which is, yeah, it's very Midwestern.
I
But
had no
yeah,
idea. Okay.
so that's like weird. You spend all summer, walking down cornfields picking tassels off of corn. And so for a 12-year-old, I made really good money though. I was making like 9.25 an hour. I was making bank.
That's kind of amazing.
Right.
Okay.
So, that was my first, making my own money experience, and I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed having my own money to spend. So anyways, I've always worked. So
Okay.
things got complicated my senior year. Me and my dad had some disagreements, as all teenage girls and their parents do. My parents divorced young when I was like 12, so right in the
Okay.
middle of puberty and development and everything. And so that was hard. And we had disagreements. I had a lot of back and forth with both my parents. So, anyways, roundabout. About halfway through my senior year, my dad kind of gave me the option slash not option of either moving out or being grounded for the rest of my senior year. And so I was like, at that point I paid for most everything anyways. So I was like, I guess bye. So I got my own
Wow.
apartment. I had an apartment with my cousin and a friend that we all shared for the rest of my senior year. And then I moved in with this boyfriend that I had after high school, and, because college obviously wasn't happening for me. And I didn't know what I wanted to do either. Cause, I'm like, why? I don't want to go spend money to take all these gen ed classes, like to do what? I was like, I don't really have an end goal. So what am I pursuing? So I kind of was just like in limbo for a year. I worked at this ranch, this horse ranch. I really enjoyed that job, but it wasn't, a career. So I did that for a year, and it kind of got to the point where I felt like I was spinning my wheels, and I'm like, what am I
Mm.
doing with myself here? Like rural farm community, like there isn't anything to do, and I'm not a big city gal. So it was like stay here or go to Chicago or something. And, it was like, none of that really is appealing to me. So anyways, it was one of those things where I was looking for a good excuse to go somewhere. And so when the opportunity came up, my sister, she's my very best friend in the whole world. She's not my actual sister, but she was enlisted in the Navy at the time. And so her and her
Okay.
husband ended up in Washington State. And so it came about that they needed a nanny because they found out they were pregnant. And so I said, perfect. I said, I'm great with kids. Like, let me help you. And so there was a deal worked out. So I moved out there with them for a while. Um, it was good. I lived in Washington State for almost a year. It was just across the water from Seattle, Puget Sound area,
Okay.
hop over. And it was a hard point in my life. I was 19. I just turned 19 a month before, and then I drove 36 hours cross country, just me and my dog, to go live with my sister, and her husband, who I didn't know. And so anyways, I got a job at a Goodyear shop. I had worked prior in Illinois before I left at a farm store, and we had
Okay.
like a shop type thing, so you could buy your tires and then get them installed at the shop. We did basic oil changes, batteries, stuff like that. And
Okay.
so I had a little bit of experience annoying the guys there, pretty much enough to where they showed me a little bit of stuff, so I could do tires, all of that. And so that was kind of my in at Goodyear. Was I was like, hey, I can do this, give me a chance. And they were like, well, we really don't need anybody out here. And so the deal I worked out with them was I was their service writer hybrid. So I would write tickets. And then when we were slow, I could go out in the shop and learn whatever was in the shop to do that day. And so
Okay.
I had a master tech there who was really awesome. He kind of recognized me for what I was, a scared, alone 19-year-old girl, who didn't really know anybody and didn't know what to do. So he took me under his wing, and he was great. I like get emotional thinking about him because like
Oh.
now looking back, I'm like, he was one of those like people that was a real male ally, that at the time in that particular shop, I didn't have any. Like
Yeah.
looking back now, I had this manager who was very creepy and always hitting on me. And,
Oh.
like, I was 19 and he was like 30 plus with kids and a wife. And he was
Mm.
always flirting with me. And it was just like, yeah, at the time I was so naive, but looking back now, I'm like, ooh. And anyways, there was this other kid worked there. Sorry, I'm gonna like get off
No,
on a
no,
tangent.
please do it.
There was there was this kid who worked there who was probably just a year or two older than me, so maybe 21 at the time. And I don't even remember why he didn't like me for whatever reason, but something came about because shortly after I got hired, he got fired. I think it was a matter of he wasn't doing things the right way. And so when I got hired, I have a problem with that. If you're not doing things the right way and it affects my job and the way I do things, and my productivity, that's a problem for me. So I kind of made it known that he wasn't doing things the right way. That probably was why he didn't like me. But
That might
anyways,
do it.
yeah, but I remember he got fired, right? And he had this shitty, sorry, I don't know if I can cuss on here. Um,
You do you, boo.
okay, thank you. He had this shitty, like, air impact for tires, like just, a half-inch gun, and he threw it away, right, when he left, when he
Okay.
quit. And so I pulled it out of the trash because I didn't have any tools. And I was like, it works fine. Like I put some oil in it and I used it for weeks. And then he came back in to just bullshit with the guys, I guess, and saw that I was using it and took it back because he didn't want me using it. And I'm like, okay. And anyways, I like just remembered that. It was like a total memory that I blocked out of my brain. But I just remember being like going to my manager and being like, what the hell? Like, what's his problem? Because I couldn't do tires anymore without my own impact. I had to go borrow one or something. And it
Oh my
was just a
goodness.
whole thing. But anyways, so that happened. That was my intro to Goodyear. And
Okay.
so my sister and her husband had their baby, and unfortunately, he ended up passing away from SIDS
Oh
at
jeez.
about 2 months old. So
Oh God.
that was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard for her, and me kind of being there. I'm like, I love you, but I don't know how to help. I don't know what I can do.
Yeah.
So,
When you were a
anyways,
baby yourself, yeah.
yeah, exactly. We were, and she was very young. She's only a few years older than me. And it's like, what do we, how do we address this scenario
Mm,
in a way that like it doesn't make it messy? And so
yeah.
anyways, it just ended up being one of those things that we kind of went apart for a while. And so at that point, I was like truly on my own because we pretty much cut all communication. It was just like she needed her space
Oh,
and
wow.
I needed mine. And we're totally fine now, which is like
Good.
we've come full circle. We were like, this all, it was bullshit, but we love each other and we're stronger now because of it.
That's
So
good.
anyways, sorry, I keep going off on a tangent here, but
That's okay. I'm
so
glad
that
I'm not the
that
only one. I'm like the rabbit hole girl, and you're like, this is awesome.
see, and I was worried about being nervous and not knowing what to talk
Yo, she
about.
was nervous and didn't think that she was going to have anything to say. Now, mind you, it's like wind her up and watch her go. I love it.
But
You're doing great.
yeah. So yeah, when that happened, that was early 2019, was when he passed. And so at that point I was truly on my own. I went out and found myself a little too expensive cabin to rent with my dog, and work was my life. That's all I did. I wasn't old enough to go to the club or to the bar or make friends,
Yeah.
anywhere. And so I just worked, and I kind of worked myself into this like depression, like state of depression, because I was
Mm,
like, okay, I don't hate what I'm doing for a living, but I'm like, there has to be more. I'm like, I want to do more. I want to learn, engines. I want to learn how to actually take this stuff apart and actually understand what I'm looking at and what I'm touching,
yeah.
and Goodyear wasn't the place to do that. And so it was kind of like a fate thing. Like I'm a huge believer of like everything happens for a reason, even if it sucks at the time. There's always going to be a point in your life when you look back and you can appreciate all the bad things that happened. And that's kind of what happened here. Was like, it was the worst of the worst scenario, but the things that came out of it were, put me on the course that I am today. And so, back to the no money thing, it was always kind of adamant to me that I didn't want to put myself in debt to pursue school until I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And so when I started to get into the world of automotive deeper and started to be like, hey, I could enjoy this and I could really, see myself doing this forever. But not only that, is it was actually something that I could see, I can provide for myself this way. I don't need somebody else to do it for me. I don't need a man to pay my bills. Like if I have this skill and I, develop that into a point where I'm self-sufficient, like no, you can't say anything. I've got my own money, I've got my own means, I've got my skills, like really at 19, that was my thought process. Cause I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't want to have to find somebody to take care of me.
Yeah.
um my parents, they had a really weird dynamic growing up, and so I feel like it just put kind of like a bad taste in my mouth as far as that role, the whole man taking care of woman thing. But
Yeah.
so anyways, that was never what I wanted. I'm like, I want to take care of myself. And so I remembered that WyoTech had come to my high school, and I'm like, I wonder what that's about, because I didn't remember. I'd paid zero attention to it at the time because that wasn't what I wanted to do. And so I looked it up, and I'm like, it's a 9-month program. Like that's crazy. As it happens, my dad's military, and so he has the GI Bill, but he never used it. And so how that works is after post 9/11, you can gift your GI Bill to your dependents.
Oh,
So right. It's kind of like a thing nobody really knows about. They don't really talk about it, but it's a huge game changer because
yeah.
it put me through college and I owed $0. Like
Amazing.
it was insane. And so I had 12 months of that to use. So I did 12 months of WyoTech, and that was that. And so it
Amazing.
was insane. Yeah, it really, because
I-
that was the deciding factor for me. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to take out a $50,000 loan or whatever it was going to be, and that changed everything. So all I had to do was get myself there, and
And
so I
convince
did.
dad to gift you the GI Bill. How did that go?
Well, on it, that was the one thing he had always said he would do for us. But at the time, it was 4-year university, so I didn't
Mhm.
really think that. I'm like, okay, a year isn't going to make a dent in that, so I didn't really think about it, and so that's kind of why the 9-month program at WyoTech was like, oh shit,
Yeah.
like I can do the entire program, graduate, and then some, because I added that extra class because I had 12 months instead of 9, and nothing. It was like, why wouldn't I go? So
Yeah.
I really, like I said, it really was fate, because I hadn't thought about it when I was in high school, and then full circle when I really needed it to happen, when I was spinning my wheels, didn't know what to do. It's like, there it was. I had to
Yeah.
do a little digging, but it's like you always have to do half the work. You know what I mean? Like the universe or whatever you believe in isn't just going to hand it to you. You have to do half the work.
I
So
like that. I like that.
yeah,
Yes.
that's,
At
have you
least
ever
half the
heard
work,
Where the Red
sometimes more
Fern
than
Grows?
that, but yes.
Yeah. Have you ever read that book, Where the Red Fern Grows?
Maybe a gazillion years ago. Is that from
That's what
that?
that's from. Yeah, it's
Okay.
when he's chopping down the tree and he's like, God, like, why, just blow this tree over and make it easy with the wind. And his grandpa's like, nope, you got to do half the work. And I
Interesting.
always remembered that.
I
Yeah.
like that.
So yeah, that's
So
the point I ended up at WyoTech. I left Washington and
amazing.
headed
Well,
there.
it's interesting because I feel like one of the biggest gripes that I feel like I have about our educational system in general. I mean, there's so many parts and pieces to it, but I I, I hate that when kids are seniors in high school and they still have no freaking clue what they want to be when they grow up. Like the vast majority is it has no idea. We're forced to make this decision to spend tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to school when we don't yet know what it is we want, and then we wind up not taking full advantage of it. We wind up spending all of this money and going in debt for no reason when just what, a year, 2 years out of high school, you had enough life to say, "Oh, this is the direction," and be going to school because you wanted to and genuinely motivated to make the most out of it. That's the difference, right? That's huge.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like that thing, like everybody, like I felt the pressure. I thought I was a huge POS because I didn't go to college immediately after
Right.
graduating. And it's like, like I said, I didn't even know it was an option. My high school did kind of offer vocational classes, but it was like you get an auto shop and you get welding.
Yeah.
And how many women are in those classes? Zero.
Right.
And so it's one of those things where it's like it's there's potential. It's just it's not
Nobody
their
knows.
agenda, so that's not what they're pushing, right?
Yeah. So I want to go back in time a little bit. So you're working at a country store. What did you call it? Feed
Yeah,
store?
it's called a farm and fleet.
A
Yeah.
farm and fleet. And so I mean, how automotive and tires and whatnot, that wasn't all of what they did, I'm assuming. You did other stuff there.
No.
So what was your official job there?
Um, So it was kind of, I got hired as a cashier, and then the lady in the candy department went on maternity leave, so I was stocking candy for a month or 2, and
Okay.
then I think my manager, I had a really great manager. Her name was Val. Like I will always remember her. I think she realized like how bored I was because it's like I don't want to sound like a whiner, but I would literally like as a cashier, I would go home and I would like cry from frustration because just standing there all day is so not me. Like I would stand there and it would just feel like hours and hours and hours. It'd be like a 4-hour shift and I'm like, I've been standing here all day. And so anyways, I think she just like kind of recognized that I wanted to do something and she kind of knew I was like rough and tumble. I was always kind of a tom girl growing up, but I didn't really like know myself well enough to like know
Yeah.
what I wanted to be or how I wanted to present myself. So I was
Yeah.
just this really awkward kid and I think she was like, "You want something to do? There's an opening in this department back here." And so it was stocking tractor parts and chemicals and
Interesting.
coolant and
Okay.
oil and yeah, and then selling tires and from I kind of learned part of it. It
Okay.
was kind of hard to do that job because I didn't know anything. And they're like,
Yeah.
start selling these tires. And so I'm like, tires, yeah. So I learned like as much as I could about tires, right? And then I'm like, okay, this is cool. I felt really cool working with all the guys in the shop, and like all the other girls my age were, like in clothing and seasonal and all those like girly departments. And I just felt like, hey, this is really cool and I enjoy it. And so it was that point. I turned
Interesting.
18 and so I was allowed to be out in the shop at that point. And
Okay.
she's like, you wanna get out there? She's like, go for it as long as they're not
How
busy. And so
how cool. Okay. So it was
yeah.
really kind of happenstance in this first manager that really gave you your first introduction to any of this kind of work.
Yeah, it's like she was the first one who really had the faith in me that I could do it, because there
Interesting.
wasn't in my mind, I don't think there was ever a doubt, but I don't think I ever thought about the fact that I could do it either because
Right.
nobody had told me I could or had given me the opportunity.
Yeah.
I think we talked like on the panel, I told you about my dad, when I wanted to take that auto shop class in high school, and I had mentioned it to my dad after getting this job and working in the tire department because I'm like, this would be perfect to learn more about my job at school, you know. And
Yeah.
he didn't want to go for it, didn't want to sign me up for the class, and so it was kind of like a whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know, at the time, honestly, I was so busy at work. I was, like, doing school and sports and work, and I was just tired, but so, you know, it yeah, she really was, like she got me
That's
into it. She really
awesome.
was the one that made it happen for me. And it's funny you say that because, like, she messaged me I haven't heard from her from years, and she messaged me a few months ago and was just like, "Hey, how are you?" And I was like, "Hey, like, you'll never believe, like, what I'm doing now." And I think I even told her, I'm like, "It's totally because of you, you know, you had the faith to be like, I'm not gonna put, you know, if she wants to work, we'll make her work, we'll let her work," you know, and
Yeah. Yeah, she saw a
she
kid who
was
needed a challenge and
yeah,
who wouldn't be afraid of that kind of work, and
yeah,
it gave you your first introduction to it, and despite dad's negativity about it, it was enough that, like, it planted the seeds, right? It
yeah,
planted the seeds such that, like, you were able to get that next job at Goodyear and kinda keep going down that path. I love that. How cool.
thank you.
I
Yeah,
I
she
hope that you, like, get to
oh,
talk to her more and, like, fill her in on, like, everything you're doing. I'm
I
so
will, I'll
curious
send her the
what
link.
made her, like, think of that for you, like, if she had a background in it or, like, what made her I don't know, I'm just curious.
I don't know, yeah, I'm like, I'm curious now too, we'll have to ask her, be like, "Why me?" You know, like, there were
Yeah,
plenty of other employees to be moved around, I guess, but
yeah. How cool.
everything happens for a reason.
Alright. And so now dad was not a fan of you taking auto shop in high school. When you
Mhm.
came back to him and said, "I wanna go back to school and I wanna use your GI Bill, and it's to go be an auto mechanic," how'd that go over?
Um, Honestly, I'm trying to think, cause it at the time, you know, I lived in Washington, so when I, enrolled, I just kinda did it, or I put in my application, I think, and then had heard back that I was accepted, and then, you know, then starts the financial aid. So I think I just called him up and I was like, "Hey, I enrolled at WyoTech, I need your GI Bill information," and I think he pretty much, cause at that point he pretty much knew that I was gonna do what I wanted to do anyways, you know, after because they really didn't want me to move to Washington, that was
Mm,
I think it was scary for them just because you know, the idea it was a 33-hour drive, and I was
yeah.
alone, you know, not old enough to carry a gun or anything yet, me and my lab, my super vicious attack dog, um, but, you know, and it was one of those things, I think they were both really like, "Are you sure?" You know, "Are you sure?"
Yeah.
But obviously I was old enough, they couldn't tell me no anyways.
Yeah.
So I did it, and I don't know, it's
Okay.
been one of those things, I think they've kinda just sat back and seen what happened, like, when they just let me or if they saw what happened when they just let me
Do
do
your
my own
thing.
thing. Yeah, yeah. We had a rocky relationship, me and both of my parents, for a long time. It was really honestly, it was really WyoTech at that point was when we started talking again because I was at that age when I was like, "Man, I miss my family," you know, I miss
Mm,
having my family, like, all the petty stuff from my teenage years isn't worth not having them around for,
yeah.
and so it that's the point when we started to pick back up on our, you know, good relationships, but it
Yeah.
was yeah, it was really a matter of just, I'm gonna do what I need to do, and I'm gonna do what I have to do, and, you know, if
I
you
love
guys
it.
wanted anything to say about it, you should have done so when I was a teenager.
I love it. I love it. Okay, I have to ask. This is a question that I ask often, and I think sometimes it really stumps people, and I don't necessarily know what I'm looking for here, but I'm curious if you have any like insight. Like you've had this attitude, obviously, since you were young. You've had this like I'm going to do what I want to do regardless. And like, granted, you weren't exposed to a lot of this stuff when you were younger, so you didn't know about it at the time. But like, you've always kind of been that kid who says, "I'm gonna go do that thing," even though people are telling me I shouldn't. Um, were you always that kid? Like, did you come out that way? Do you have an idea of, like, what it was about you or your childhood or, like, what like, how did that start and where does that come from in you? Do you know? I know it's a
Ah,
weird question.
no, I mean, honestly, I have a pretty good idea. I don't
Okay.
know because 'cause I'm no psychologist, but,
That's okay.
um, man, I don't know, because I've always kind of just been I've always kind of had that attitude where, like, especially if you tell me not to or I can't, I'm going to do it and I'm going to blow you away because you told me that.
Mhm.
I don't know. I feel like just part of me has always had something to prove, you know? Like
Yeah.
I'm the oldest in my immediate family. I'm the oldest daughter. I've got two younger brothers, and I don't know, my whole family's like blue collar. All the men in my family are blue collar military types. And so
Okay.
I've always grown up in an environment of like, hard work. And I feel like it offended me, like, even as a young kid, to hear people say that women couldn't do things or
Mm.
shouldn't do things. Like, when, like, this is a really dumb example, but when,
No.
like, you're cleaning up tables and chairs and they're like, okay, we need some strong boys to come pick up all these chairs. I'd be that one with like three chairs under each arm, like hobbling, like just to prove a point. You know what I mean? And
I
I don't,
do.
I
I
don't,
do, because I resemble that comment. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's just, I've always been that way. I've always wanted to prove you wrong. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I don't know. Like, another example I'll give you, my grandfather has always owned his own construction business,
Okay.
since ever. And so, we grew up, Papa's building houses, and it's like my parents can point out the houses he's built in the community and stuff like that. And
Okay.
so I remember myself, and I have three female cousins. We're kind of like reversed. I'm the only female with brothers, and then they
Okay.
have one brother with three
Okay.
sisters. And so the boys were always going to get to go do stuff with Papa and with our, my uncle, their dad. And I
Wow.
remember we always asked him, like, hey, can we come on the job site with you? Like, let us come work with you. Like, even if it's just bullshit demolition, like something we literally can't mess up, just
Yeah.
to come out and work with you. And that was never even a discussion. Like, it was
Mm.
always like a hard no. And I understand, I do, like, getting in the way. You don't want a bunch of kids running around and stuff, but it was never a problem to have the boys there. You know what I mean? It was only a
Right.
problem to have us girls around. And so I just always remember, kind of, even from a young age, being like, fine, like, I'm gonna
Uh-huh.
go do my own cool shit somewhere else. You know what I mean? And so
I love it.
I really think that's it. I've always kind of been competitive too. I'm very competitive.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and it was held up to you as like it was all around you, but it wasn't for you. And like
Yeah.
so yeah, it's like that like you can't have it. It makes you want it more and then makes you
Yeah.
want to prove that point. It's interesting that you're the oldest. I'm the youngest, and I always blamed being the youngest for the reason why I'm like that, because I always had something to prove. It was like, I could do it by myself, even though I was like the littlest in the family, right? Like I always
Yeah.
had that kind of attitude. Um,
Yeah.
so that's
It's
interesting.
huh. It's like,
But being
yeah.
the only girl in a family that said, no, you can't do these things, like that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
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 I love
And
it.
yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I could probably
I-
talk for hours about it,
right. We
but
probably all could. So I'm curious. So you kind of fell upon it. It was held up to you as something you couldn't have. It made you want to kind of be stubborn and do your own thing no matter what. You had happenstance of this manager that kind of exposed you to it. You go off, happenstance puts you kind of needing a job, and you wind up working in the automotive industry again. Was there a point, do you remember, was there a point at which you were like, I really enjoy this and this is what I want to do? Like, do you remember what that was that made you say, yeah, I am going to pursue doing this as an actual career?
so I had some of those moments, I feel like, at Farm and Fleet, initially, because
Okay.
once they moved me to the shop, I was kind of in that same boat at Goodyear, like half service riding, half up front. And so it really made me feel good, to, like, when I would be up front doing paperwork, and then the same guy or whoever would see me out there working on his car, even if it was dumb stuff like putting a battery in or changing a tire, I could, like, let me tell you, I could sling some batteries in some cars. But I don't know, it was always super gratifying to me.
Yeah.
I'm classic daddy issues, so, like, compliments really stroke my ego, and it made me feel useful, I think. It made me feel like I had a purpose on top of it,
Mm,
more than, like, yeah, the compliments are nice, but, like, feeling like I got something done, that I got something purposeful done, on top of it.
yeah.
Because I for so long, like, I've come to kind of change my mindset of it, but, like, on the art scene, it's, like, so underappreciated that, like, people don't,
Mhm.
they're like, "Yeah, that's a pretty picture," but, like, nobody appreciates how many hours you put into it or, like, how many times you restart it and how many, just the little things, and it just
Yeah.
you don't ever feel you don't get the same gratification from the customer, I guess, as you do when you feel like you're helping somebody. So there was some of that there, and then definitely mostly at Goodyear, I think, because that was the time I had a lot of free time when I wasn't doing stuff up front and all my paperwork was done. So I one point started like writing my own notes or like my own textbook. I still have it up there actually.
Oh, wow.
Um, it's like and I pretty much just found this website that was like, "How do engines work? Like, what are engines?" And it was like because that's how I remember I have to take notes, I'll write it down or do it. And so without having the ability to go put my hands on an engine, I'm like, if I write all of this down and write pictures and like draw diagrams explaining, the different types of engine and the layouts and, what all the components are and what they do and how they work. So I was doing that for a few months and then I'm like,
Okay.
driving myself crazy because I wanted to actually do it and had no way to do it. And so that was the point when I started to really be like, I want to do this more. I want to like I had the itch. I don't know how to explain it. I had the itch to just like go
Yeah.
try it. Even though I
Yeah.
didn't know if I would be good at it. I'm like, I really want to at least attempt it. And so yeah, that was
I love it.
really, I mean, that was that. It was
That
like
was
I
it.
have to
All
do it.
right.
And then when I did it, I was like, I'm done.
Hook, line, and sinker. All right. All
Yeah.
right. How was school for you? What was that experience like for you?
School was great, honestly. Like of all the experiences I've had in shops and stuff there, I mean, there was always, a kid or two, but overall, I mean, WyoTech was excellent. When
Nice.
I went, it was much smaller scale also, because they had,
Okay.
they went through the whole ownership
Restructuring.
change.
Yeah.
Yep, and so they were kind of coming back from that, and so it was
Okay.
like class sizes were perfect. I had a lot of really amazing instructors, who
Nice.
paid a lot of attention to us. It wasn't ever a matter of like, "Oh, you're a girl, I'm gonna, not come over and help you or not spend time
Awesome.
explaining to you anything like that." But it was great. No, I really honestly, I miss Laramie. I miss some days I wish I could go back and just kind of re-experience it. Some days definitely not, but some days I'm like, man, the just the knowledge in the environment. There's just so much knowledge
Yeah.
floating around that school. It's insane. They have some really amazing top
That's
quality instructors. So,
and that's fantastic that you didn't have any issues with teachers being weird about you being female. So that's fantastic. That's awesome to hear.
yeah. Mm.
Very cool. How about getting your first job out of school? What was that like?
So, I had a shop job during school, because
Nice.
I worked at a Goodwill. I was good at on, like, Goodyear and Goodwill. I worked at a
Okay.
Goodwill,
Okay.
because when I first got there, there weren't many shops hiring. Laramie's a pretty small, tight-knit town, and so I worked
Yeah.
there for a while, and then they did this whole weird thing where they, like, fired everybody and restarted, and so
Oh,
I remember,
okay.
like yeah, right? It was weird. So I remember going into school because I would go immediately WyoTech is 7 to 4, so it's like a full day, and then I would go immediately there to work, and then, that's how I paid my rent. I didn't live in the dorms because of my dog. I wasn't willing to give my dog up, and so I had to pay my rent, so I had to work, and I remember just, like, panic, like, what am I gonna do? Where am I gonna work? And this one of my instructors at the time said, I've actually got this friend starting a shop and he's looking for another tech. And he's like, he's really great, he's inclusive, he's amazing. And so I was like, great, sign me up.
Okay.
So I ended up getting hired there and it was a great shop to work for. It was really like freeing for me. I had so much anxiety when I started there because it wasn't the kind of shop where it's like, oh, I can learn with somebody. They pretty much were like, "You're on your own."
Oh, wow.
If you say you can do these jobs, like you got it. And so
Okay.
the first like job I had there was this like I don't even know what it was, like a Buick Lucerne or something, just
Okay.
boatload of problems. Like the transmission was slipping, like both wheel bearings, I think I did the power steering pump, but then just it was like a whole mess. The thing had leaks galore.
Okay.
And so I remember them being like, "Do you think you can do all of this ticket?" And I remember being like, Yeah, pretty sure. And, because I'd been through at that point, had been through a few classes at WyoTech, so I had a better idea of what I was doing than when I started, but I'd never been an auto tech alone before. And so I remember just being like, all right, well, and so he told me if I could get through this job and, see how it goes, he'd give me a raise. And so I'm like, great, you know? So I ended up just knocking it out of the park with this thing. Like, it was great. Honestly, it was a really good confidence booster for me just because it was some difficult jobs, but for the most part, I handled it and got it done with, very little help.
I
And
love
he was
it.
like, great. He was awesome. He was thrilled. He like immediately, like, I had a raise in 2 weeks of working there, and it was great. He was the kind of boss where it was like, if you keep yourself busy and you're working, come in when you want to, work as long as you want to, get your stuff done. And so I did. It was great. It worked out perfect too because it was right when COVID got bad,
Uh,
and we went on spring break at WyoTech, and it was spring break, and we just didn't come back for 6 weeks.
oh,
So
geez.
I busted ass at that shop. I think I was clocking like 50, 60 hours a week, just as many as he would let me. And at one point he texted me and he's like, hey, maybe slow it down on the overtime. But I had nothing else to do. So I was just putting money away and working my butt off and having
I
fun because
love it.
oh my
I've got
God,
to give
it
you
was
some
great.
serious credit. I love that you're like, it was a great confidence boost. I'm like, girl, you had to have some serious confidence to be like, yeah, I can do that. Yep. I've
It
had
was
like
scary.
3 whole months of school under my belt and I've done some tires and oil changes. Yeah, I could do that.
Bogey, let me tell you, there were a few moments of laying under the car crying for a minute. There was just a few of just like I just need
Uh-huh.
a minute. I'm gonna cry real quick and then crawl out from under here and I'm fine.
But that is life right there, Hannah. Like I absolutely love it. It's
Literally.
like I know that I can do it. I don't know how yet, but I know that I can. I'm fucking scared, but I'm gonna say yes anyway. And then I'm gonna cry, but I'm gonna fucking figure it out. And I'm gonna get it done. Like that is it. Like that's life right there. You did it. Like,
Literally.
and you proved it and you made it happen and you did it and you kicked butt and I love it. That's fantastic.
That was a great chop. He really that I know you say it really was a great confidence booster for me. Just he had the faith to let me figure it out, and so he let
Yeah.
me do just that.
Well, and you
It was
convinced
really
him that you
awesome.
could, right? Like he had the faith, but like you had to be willing to say yes, I can. And I think a lot of people even more experienced than you would be intimidated to say that. And you were willing to say, "Yep, I've got this." And that takes balls. Like give yourself some credit. Like
Yeah, there you go.
that's awesome. All right, so tell us like what brings you to like where you're at now? So you're working at this great shop. COVID's happening. WyoTech's kind of off for a little while. You eventually do graduate, but like tell me like how did we get to where we're at now and what's been new since then?
Oh man, yes. I'm like, okay, timeline. So I graduated. I hung around Laramie. I hung around
Okay.
Laramie for about 10 months after that. I had to wait my lease out. And then I ended up my current husband and I started dating, and so we kind of both knew we wanted to leave. Just because I mean Laramie's a great place, but it's the type of town where it's so small. Like there's only so many opportunities for jobs, and then
Yeah.
you have an hour drive in either direction before you even hit the next town. So as much as we loved it, it was just not right for what we needed right then. And so it was really just kind of a leap of faith thing. We're like, all right, where are we going to go? And so we started researching states and found kind of roughly, what we wanted to spend on a place and how to make that happen. And so I have family in Middle Tennessee here. And so I was
Okay.
kind of like, it would be nice to be back closer east. All my family's here. I've been out west for so long, so far away. It's like minimum a day drive to get to
Yeah.
anybody. And so, anyways, Michael got a really good job offer down here, and it ended up just being kind of like a we'll see what happens. So we found our
Okay.
place here, got our offer accepted. He started working, and then I started
Nice.
working, and it was great. So yeah, I started. I was at John Deere when I first got here for almost a
Okay.
year, and that was great.
I
Nothing. Yeah, nothing against John Deere. I'm not gonna
Okay.
name drop any particular dealerships, but
Okay.
there's a dealership here, the one that I worked for, that they don't practice the same like values that they preach. And
Mm,
so yeah, you know what I mean. I don't like I said, I don't want to bad talk any businesses, but
that's okay.
it just got to
There's
it
there's
just
bad
got to
seeds
be
everywhere. So it's,
yeah, you know. So
there's
that
a lot of wonderful John Deere folks, and it probably has nothing to do with John Deere as a company,
yeah,
but
exactly. And most of the people that work there are great. So
yeah.
it's nothing against anybody. It just all in all, it wasn't the environment for me. So
Okay.
so yeah, when I stepped away from there, that was in May of this year. And that's actually I
Okay.
kind of took that time. I went through some personal things like immediately after that. I don't mind talking about it if you want to hear
Totally.
about it, but
It's totally up to you.
so that happened. It was like left John Deere, and a week later, I found out I was expecting, and so
Oh,
it was really exciting for us. And it's not hard. It's not hard to talk about, but I want to choose my words correctly.
okay.
It was really hard to deal with, just the idea of being pregnant and having a career, and at that point having to find a new job. I was really scared that I wouldn't be able to find anything, who one wanted a female tech, but two wanted a pregnant
A
female
pregnant
tech.
female
And
tech.
it's like, I know that you don't have to disclose all of that, but my thought process was like, they're going to find out eventually. And then I look like a liar, for
Mm,
not saying anything about it. And I know it's probably irrational to think that way, but, I haven't necessarily ever worked in the greatest, most supportive work environments. And so just what I have come to expect is that, and so
yeah.
it was really a struggle, because my husband and I were very excited, and then but there was that worry and that stress and that anxiety on top of it. And so it
Absolutely.
was kind
That's
of
a
like a
valid fear. I think that's a very
yeah,
valid fear. I think women have been dealing with that not just in our industry, but it through since the dawn of time, since women started entering the workforce, is that fear of like, am I going to be judged for just even being able to have a child, let alone actually being pregnant? And is that going to interfere with my career development? 100%. That's very reasonable
exactly.
fear.
And yeah, it was just, I was kind of like, I didn't want to. I was absolutely not going to give up my career, but I have also, I've had this idea that I was going to raise my kids. I'm not going to dump my kid in a daycare at 6 weeks old and then, good luck. So it was like this huge thing where I kind of had this like world crashing down around me moment for about a
Yeah.
month. And so I needed my space and whatever. And then we ended up miscarrying the next month. And
Oh,
so
jeez. I'm
that was
sorry.
hard. It's okay. So that was hard.
Yeah.
That kind of put a hindrance on the job search for a minute.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so I luckily my husband is amazing. I have the most supportive, amazing husband in the world. Like I'm not gonna gush for hours about him on here, but he's amazing. And so anyways, he wanted to make sure that I was okay. And so he made it very clear that I needed to go back when I was ready, not any sooner, not to feel obligated to or anything like that. And so that was a gift in itself, because
Yeah.
that was 2 weeks before Sturgis is when it happened. And so
Oh,
I was kind
wow.
of in this like fog for a while. And then
Yeah.
I had told Dana I wouldn't be able to make it to Sturgis because of working at John Deere. And so I was like, I have no reason not to go. And so I hitched a ride up with Casey, one of the board members. And it was like one of the best things I think I could have done for myself at that point. Cause it's just like, I so needed that. I just needed to be out of my house. But not only that, is to like be around these women that nobody else could possibly understand how that felt for me, how that summer just, I mean, the combination of the job stress and the
Yeah.
baby and everything. And I'm like, my mother, she miscarried also. And so she
Mhm.
kind of, but I'm like, you just don't understand. She was a homemaker. So I'm like, you
Yeah.
don't have to worry about giving up your career for the sake of starting a family. You know what I mean? So that was hard, but yeah, it was Sturgis
Yeah.
was, incredible. I mean, I talked to Teresa and Dana and I mean, all these incredible women and some of them mothers in the industry, it was just so, I feel like little pieces of my heart kind of got back together, like all those, just all the women. I'm just sitting here thinking about the memories and everything. It was that perfect getaway, but it wasn't like get away and forget. It was like get away and
And Bill.
process and heal. Yes, exactly. It was exactly what I needed, really. And so
Ugh,
that
I
was
I no wonder Dana says that you're an excellent spokesperson for JCF, for Jessi Combs Foundation. I mean, you just in a nutshell, like I try to explain to people the value of these female focused communities within the automotive space, and it's hard to explain it. But like you just like laid out exactly why there's just things that you don't understand if you're not a woman in a male dominated field, and having that sisterhood, having that connection, having that space that allowed you to feel seen and in your entirety is just everything. And I'm so glad that you had that, and I'm so deeply saddened for your loss. And you seem like you're like doing okay and kind of making your way through and figuring it out. And I know that you're going to be an amazing mother one day when the time is perfect. And as you said, you got to like trust the timing of the universe, and it will happen for you, and you're going to be an amazing mom. But I'm so glad that you had that community. So
thank you,
glad.
Logie.
Oh my goodness. Whew, this is
Sorry to
heavy,
just get all
y'all.
serious. I know.
No,
I'm
this is
sorry.
wonderful. This has been such a phenomenal conversation, Hannah. Like I have to look at the time. Oh my God, like we're almost out of time already. How did that happen? This has been such a wonderful conversation. Guys at home, I hope you guys are enjoying this as much as I have been. We're gonna go a little over the hour. Are you okay with that? Okay, because you have big news. You have exciting news, right? You just got
I do. I
tell us
did.
your
I
news.
literally, yeah. So I've been searching for the right shop for a while. I was really looking for a fab shop, but there's a shortage around here, so I'll
Mm.
just have to open my own. But no, I start at a new shop on Friday, actually. I drop off my tools tomorrow. So it's a
Yay.
little local auto place, but the potential to make a lot of money is there. So I'm really excited to get back into
Yay.
it.
Wonderful. Congratulations. That is super
Thank
exciting.
you.
I'm happy for you. And timing is everything. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so since we are up against our hour, I know that you had mentioned there's two kind of final questions I want to ask. So you have this vision for combining your interests: art, cars and trucks, fabrication, and helping others. The industry and the trades kind of helped you create a life for yourself. I mean, for anybody who's questioning whether the trades is a viable career path, you're 24 years old, you own your own home, right? Like you're
Yeah.
doing the damn thing, which is more than most 24-year-olds are doing. So congratulations on that. The trades absolutely provide a wonderful career path. Um, so you've made a great life for yourself, and you're passionate about kind of helping other people do the same thing. Tell me about your vision. Do you have a vision of what this future business that combines all of the things are?
Yeah, so I'm still kinda I have, like, I think about this constantly. I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about this, so I'm always coming up with new stuff, but as it stands, so I've always had this, I wanna own my own shop, I wanna do custom fab. I've had this kinda dream of doing, combining the art and the fabrication world, obviously, but I'm also a truck girl, so I'm like, I wanna work on old trucks and, I gotta throw some cars in there for my husband, but I I've always had this dream, I shouldn't say always, for the last few years, um, of somehow creating like pretty much what I didn't have as a kid. I want to make a space and I want it all to be free. So it's like money isn't even in the conversation, where specifically, like, I don't want to be like, sorry guys, but there's a lot more opportunities out there for men to learn stuff than there are for women. So ideally there would be like these free classes, like maybe like after hours at my shop, because having the shop space is a huge thing, but then having the tools and the equipment, obviously. But I want to have women and kids like just be able to come do classes, like pretty much similar to like what Teresa is doing, but I want to have a permanent base. I want to make it like a thing, like how you have extracurriculars after school where you go take music classes or art classes. Like, I want this
Yeah.
to be the free activity, for these kids that don't have anything to do, or, whose parents can't afford to take them out to do, stuff. Because not only, I know not everybody's going to enjoy it, but like, what if they do? It's not only is that a fun activity, but you're educating yourself and having fun. You're giving yourself the skill, so at 18 years old, maybe some of these kids can just go get a lube tech job.
Yeah.
It's like you don't necessarily have to. Pretty much the whole idea behind it is I want to make sure that the ability to or to not go to school isn't even like a question. I know it helps, but think about how many shops are hiring for lube techs. Like, if you can
Mm-hmm.
go in there and change oil and change a battery and change a tire every now and then, like, you got a job that pays what, 15
Yeah.
an hour? People are
Yeah.
paying lube techs right now in some states, like,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of just the whole idea is I want free education for the underprivileged, anybody. There's no excuses at that point. It's kind of just like
I
that
love it.
that little, kind of how JCF was for me, that little like scooch to just get them going. So
I love
that's
it.
that's the dream ideally, is I just want
Oh, it's a
to.
fantastic vision. I absolutely love it. And I see it happening. It may not be an immediate thing. It's going to take you a while to build that, but I see it
Yep,
happening and I think it's a beautiful, beautiful vision. I
it's like the
absolutely love
10-year
it.
plan.
I think that's fair. Maybe even before
Yeah,
then. You've got a
yeah,
you've got a tribe of amazing women around you. So maybe before then, but we'll see. And if there's anything I can
yeah,
help you with, I'm a phone call away, girl. That is
yeah.
that's like my kind of idea. That's like right up my alley. I'm like,
Yes,
ooh, we should
right.
talk.
Yes. Yep, I've
I
got
love it.
land. Like, I just need a shop to like plop on it and
All
then.
right. All right. All right. We need to talk
Right?
more offline, my friend.
Yes. Ooh.
All right. So, um, final question. And side note for you, when you have to go back and watch this episode because you got to look through all the comments. You've got a lot of love and a lot of wonderful
Oh,
folks just singing your praises in the comments. So make sure you go back and watch that. But my final question for you, and then I'm gonna be respectful of your time and let you get on with your evening. Um, if you had a chance to go back and talk to little baby Hannah, younger
oh
version
man.
of you, what are your words of wisdom for her?
I would tell young Hannah, I would tell her not to be scared, not to let her fear dictate her choices, to do what she wants to do without fear of judgment because it doesn't matter anyway, and to just go out there and kick ass because, man, if I had the confidence that I do now as a teen or a preteen, game changer, game changer. So yeah, let that be a message to all the little anybody's who need it,
Yeah,
because like, for real, it doesn't matter what other people think of you. It doesn't matter what they say about you. As long as you enjoy it and you're happy, that's
absolutely.
all you need. So
Well, and newsflash, it's not just the littles that need to hear that. Like, I think we
the
all need to hear
everyone's.
that sometimes, right? We all need to hear that sometimes. So, wonderful words to end on. Hannah, you're fantastic. Absolutely
Oh,
fantastic.
Bogey.
I definitely understand why you won the JCF scholarship, and I am thrilled to know you. I'm excited to watch the rest of your career unfold. Guys watching this at home, make sure you go check her out. Go follow her on social media. Check out what she's up to, and this is one to watch out for because she's gonna do some pretty cool stuff in the future. I just know it. So, thank you so much for saying yes to this, Hannah. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Bogey.
Abs-
This was so amazing.
my pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure. Folks at home, thank you guys so very much for tuning in and hanging out with us for this hour, little over an hour. I hope you enjoyed meeting Hannah as much as I did. As always, so great to see you guys. So many familiar names and faces and some new names. Welcome, guys. Those of you who are new here, make sure you come back next week. Every Wednesday, we meet another incredible tradeswoman. Every Monday, we release a new archive episode. 2 times a week, you get to meet badass women doing awesome stuff out in the world. As always, if you like this, hit like, hit subscribe, leave a comment. It helps make sure that more people get to see these amazing videos and meet these incredible women. And that's what this is all about. Big thank you once again to our sponsors, Drive Time and ASE, for all of the work that they do behind the scenes to make our industry what it is and to help it grow into something even better, and for their belief and support of women in the trades and putting their money where their mouth is. So we couldn't do this without them, and we appreciate their support. But most of all, I appreciate you guys. I'm going to let you go. Have a fantastic evening. Until next time, be good to yourselves and be good to one another. Bye, guys.